Hey, this is Ramon, channel is Alpha 4. Welcome to my Answering Grr series. We are on minute 4. Technically 3 minutes and 31 seconds in. Hi, Grr. Hope you're not freaking bored of me yet.
Now let's talk about the Bible. You know that book you believe was inspired by the mind behind the universe?
I don't even feel comfortable saying that. But there's a Thomistic idea that I'm going to throw at you. St. Thomas Aquinas was not comfortable with calling God a being. So in Christological and theological and messianic terminology, God is not a creature. A creature implies creation. God is not a thing created. In Thomistic terms, there are some theologians and philosophers that do not want to even ascribe the word being. So one being, three persons. Okay. Three persons. One God. And just skip the word being and skip the word creation altogether. Why is that important? If you go to Islam or you go to Judaism, God is unfathomable. You can't, even if you have an idea of God, that's not God. That you're now creating an idea. That's your creation. That is not what God is. Not matter, not material. The idea that angels are pure thought. An angel just means messenger. And you can only use the word angel when it's actually specifically doing a function. So a divinity, a power, a small lowercase g God. That's where the idea that all the other gods are also just fallen messengers. And that idols and all that kind of stuff are dead things, dead matter that doesn't matter. Okay, that's where all that comes from. But with your oversimplistic ideas about what Christians are saying, and don't get me wrong, mere Christianity is a thing. Okay, mere Christianity is a thing, and it's a thing in all versions of Christianity, and it's a very good thing. Have the faith of a child. Okay, I'm not denying that that's not a thing. But when you're talking to apologists and theologians, they're playing a very different game than the everyday Christian. You're confusing, you're conflating two very different belief forms and two very different arguments. The people making the cosmological argument are not the same people they're not the evangelicals. They're not the fundamentalists, and they're not the prosperity gospel people. Those people are not making high-minded philosophical arguments. They're just not. God's not a genie. God's not in the universe. He's not part of the universe. The universe might be part of him. That's a whole other different cosmological claim that I'm not making here. When I do my videos, when I'm talking about the Bible, actually I wanted to talk about this a few videos ago, was my concept of hell, where I say how the concept of hell, the popular common concept of hell, the one that everybody says now, is not biblical, and that it's not found in the Bible. That's not me denying hell. As a Catholic, I can't deny that there's a hell. I'm saying that the word hell is a bad translation, a bad interpolation of whatever that concept that's being discussed in the Bible is. Because Gehenna and Hades does not equal hell. Okay? And there are different words, inferno or whatever. I mean, you can go to different languages and find a different word. The English word hell is just a bad translation. Also, the concept of hell, even the theological concept of hell, you're not going to find in there. It's not there. The theological concept of heaven, you don't get a full explanation in there. Maybe some stuff in Enoch, maybe some stuff in Revelation, maybe some stuff in Isaiah, but for the most part, you're piecing it together. Whatever hell is, it's not fully described in the Bible. Whatever purgatory is, it's not fully described in the Bible. It's just not. It's a lot of theologians and high-minded people coming to conclusions. And it's a lot of entertainment and poets making things up to fill in the gaps between the two. That's not the same thing as denying that hell exists. That's saying that the popular version of hell that you get from Dante and Virgil is not hell. That's a fictional thing that has nothing to do with it. The hell that you get on shows like Lucifer, that you get on shows like Supernatural, that's not hell. Read every translation of the Bible that you can. You're not going to get to the Christian idea of hell with the Bible alone. You're going to need the church fathers. You're going to need other concepts to come in. So if you're attacking strictly the Bible, well, then you're attacking strictly Protestantism. And that's just one form of Christianity. And then if you're attacking flat earthers and evolution deniers, well, now you're even talking about a smaller subsect of a smaller subsect. So you could actually get all the Christians in the world behind you to agree that this one small subsect of Christianity is wrong. And while we might have theological reasons for believing they're wrong, and you might have scientific reasons or just simply skeptical reasons for why they're wrong, we're all saying they're wrong. Continuing on.
Agree. You then say, so why did the creator of the universe command the stoning of disobedient children and gay people?
So I'm going to attack first your statement about the disobedient child, and then I'll get into the gay people one. I went to 3 sources on this before I made this video. I went to a secular source, I went to an academic source, a critical academic source actually, and I went to a Jewish source. And I'm going to show you the Jewish source because it's actually one that I've recommended a few times for people to read. So this is the Art Scroll Stone edition of the Shemesh. I've been recommending people read this for a while. I recommend you do too. There are a bunch of these. I don't even know when I'd be able to buy them all, or let alone read them all. But I do enjoy this interpretation and commentary on the Bible. Let me also say that the parts of the law, that's Leviticus and Deuteronomy that we're speaking about, the Deuteronomical part is actually from about 625 BC, and it coincides with similar Neo-Assyrian laws from that same time period. So this would be post-exile, and people, the priests would have added these laws in to coincide with or to recontextualize Leviticus. Anyway, that's just one theory. It's a theory that I've read in a few different commentaries. Anyway, let's get back to your question at hand about the stoning of a disobedient child. Actually, what it really says is the disobedience of an unruly son has to be brought before a court, and it could not rely on the testimony of the father alone. It has to be in front of a jury, and it has to be in front of the city gates. So it's a way to show that you can't just kill your kid. You can't just take immediate vengeance on your child. You have to take him before a court, and you have to be willing to submit him to the justice system. Why is that important? Well, because the time period that they're talking about is when a child or teenager is most rebellious. When it says an unruly child, it's speaking about a very specific time period in a child's life, in a boy's life to be specific. It's not even speaking about females here. So it's talking about a young man up to 3 months after his bar mitzvah. So from the age of 15 to 3 months after his birthday, from his 15th birthday. Why is that important? Because that's when your hormones and everything are really at their strongest. And what does it mean by rebellious child? Well, it actually lists a set of conditions to qualify as rebellious. And these are conditions to prevent later, greater crimes. So, if a 15-year-old shoots up a school, should he face the death penalty? If a 15-year-old rapes someone, should he face the death penalty? If a 15-year-old murders someone, should he face the death penalty? That is what it's talking about. For the gluttony part, for the drunkard part, he has to have stolen enough of his parents' wealth or his parents' savings or his parents' belongings and property. He would have to have stolen enough to be able to buy an excessive amount of meat and alcohol. It's actually giving a standard for the minimum. It's saying if it doesn't reach this level of crime, you cannot set him to trial. But if it does, you're not allowed to kill him. You have to take him to the community to put him on trial in our justice system. And you have to submit him to the justice system, and it can't be on your word alone. Both you and the mother have to agree that the child committed this crime. And then the jury, this group of elders in front of the city gate where we have these trials, will then decide the case. And if he is guilty, it's not going to be a small punishment. It's going to be the full legal punishment, which at that time was stoning. That is what this is saying. It's also part of Deuteronomy, which Deuteronomy is a retelling of the commandments. And so these are supposed to be hypothetical, analogous court cases. So this is sort of the recommended punishment for a specific crime. This is spelling out specific situations. Given the hypothetical situation, here is the punishment for that specific hypothetical. That's what this is. It's a law book. It's a case book. Similar to what you would see if you were a lawyer today. Now, while you might think the death penalty for some of these crimes might be too extreme, you would agree that someone would have to be punished for those crimes, I'm assuming. That's what this is. And the punishment for those crimes at that time was stoning. So further on that note, it's like a book of court cases. This is the recommended punishment, but the jury is allowed to mitigate the punishment. That's something that you should note. So the jury, this is the maximum punishment that's allowed. So just like if you copy a movie, it says in the bottom, you can be fined up to $10,000. Yeah, you can be fined up to $10,000, but you don't have to be fined up to $10,000. For murder, you can get the death penalty, but you don't have to get the death penalty. You could get life. There could be mitigating circumstances. That's why it's up to the jury. That's why it's up to the elders at the gate, not the parents, what happens to the child. And again, by child here, by rebellious child, it actually means unruly son, which is a specific time period. So that's when the child is too old to be under the parent's authority, that means over the bar mitzvah, but not old enough yet to take responsibility for his own actions. So still a teenager, so up to 3 months after his bar mitzvah. That's what that is. Now as for your second part of this question, which was on homosexuality. In this section where it's talking about that is actually going to be in Leviticus. It's just a very long section against sexual immorality. You're not supposed to you're not supposed to sleep with your father's wife, meaning your stepmother. You're not supposed to sleep with your mother's sister, which means your aunt, or any of their children, which means your very near related cousins. So like there's standard rules there. There's stuff against bestiality, which is how it gets mixed in the argument. But is it in there? Yeah. So while the rebellious kid thing has a very nice, very elegant explanation, the stoning of homosexuals doesn't have as nice of a counter. But there is some nuance to it as well. So it is not speaking against lesbianism, and it is not speaking against homoeroticism. Neither of those things is it speaking against. Nor is it speaking against having a homosexual nature. So it's not speaking against that either. It's speaking against the actual act of two men. That's the specific act. Why? It's not going to be a hard one. It actually goes back to a sin earlier in the Bible where a man was supposed to marry someone, but he didn't. So he spilled his seed, meaning he masturbated, and he was killed for it instantly. Why? Well, the Jewish people were, for a time, desert dwellers, and they were a small population. So the protection of the seed was very important. Even nocturnal emissions were a big deal. It was considered valuable because there were so few Jewish people. So the command was to be fruitful and multiply. Remember, if you go with the biblical text, you're talking about one person who left his family and had trouble conceiving. So having more children was an imperative of this group. Does that satisfy a modern secularist or atheistic or skeptical viewpoint of the Bible when they're looking at gay rights? No. And it's not meant to. Does that mean that the Bible doesn't have an answer to that? Again, no. That doesn't mean that at all. The Bible actually does have a very good answer for that. From both Paul, which most people who dislike this part also dislike Paul. Well, guess what? Paul's the one who has your answer. And also in another section with a eunuch. So what are these two sections? So Paul is speaking to a group of Christians, the Corinthians, who have fallen back on their ways. And he says there were homosexuals, there were lesbians, there were drunkards, there were all these things, just like you were. You were sodomites. You were all these things. So are they. You were just like them. You did all those same things. But now you don't. Now you live to a higher standard. We'll get to the higher standard part in a bit. Let's cut forward to the eunuch. Eunuchs are what we would consider nowadays transgendered people. Not that they had dysphoria, but that they're, well, you understand. So, a eunuch, generally speaking, in a court would be either used to protect the female princesses, or if they weren't used to protect the women, they would be used for pleasure by the men, by the kings. There's a very famous scene in Alexander, actually, where they delve into that. So the eunuch is accepted into Christianity without a problem. He just simply is immediately baptized, immediately becomes Christian. So in Christianity, we're looking at everyone who's rejected from Judaism and saying, hey, you're welcome here. You're welcome here. Judaism's rejecting you, but we're welcoming you. Are you a Jewish person who can't participate fully in the Jewish rites because of specific sins? You're welcome in Christianity. But once you're in, you got to change your ways. But you're in. Prostitutes, you're in. Tax collectors, you're in. Hey, you're a thief on a cross, you're in. You're one of us. You're welcome. So, does Christianity have an answer to this issue? Yes, it does. Is it the answer that you want to hear? No, it's not. Because the Bible still wants you to conform to God's will. But it's saying just because you're rejected under the law, because this is the law, that's Leviticus and Deuteronomy. When the Bible's talking about the law, it's talking about this specific part of the Bible. See, the Jewish people by Jesus' time had added these kind of secondary laws that made it even harder for people on the outskirts of society to participate in Jewish life. So not only could you not sin, but you couldn't even come near sinning. And if you even came near the situation, you were exiled, you were excommunicated from the group, you were banished. Well, that's a problem, and it's a problem that Jesus wanted to solve. And the way that he solved it is by saying, hey, you might have been rejected by them, but you're not rejected by me. My dictate is love. Can we love you? Because we love you. So come on in, be loved by us, come join the group. That was Jesus' answer. love your neighbor and your enemy, and love yourself, and to love everyone as you love yourself. But what does love mean? Okay, so here we go. It's saying even to the straight white male, you can't have sex with anyone you want. It's saying to the woman, you can't have sex with anyone you want. You want to have sex, it's only for procreation, and the pleasure that comes from it is its own reward. But sex can't be used for anything else. Sex is not a power play, sex is not political, sex is not something to bargain with, it's for procreation. If you don't want to procreate, that's fine. You can be a eunuch. You can be a eunuch for Christ, and you'll be rewarded for it. You'll be rewarded for not wanting to have children. But if you're going to have sex, that's for having children. Do I like that answer? No. Do I know anyone who likes that answer? No. But that's the answer that's in the Bible. If you're going to have sex, it can't be for pleasure. The pleasure is its own reward. It's supposed to be for procreation. Even if you can't procreate, that's what it's there for. And if you believe in God and you believe in miracles, then even if you haven't procreated before, maybe you can. That's what it's there for. It's to conjugate the marital act and unite the couple as one flesh. That's what it's for in biblical terminology. I'm not talking about in biological terminology, I'm talking about in biblical terminology. In biological terminology, the sex drive is there for the continuation of the species. That's what the sex drive is there for. Homosexuality, if genetic, would be exactly as Darwin would say. So let's say, so you have a gene to be homosexual. Well, that's the end of that line. So that entire family line will end with you. For Judaism, that's a real big problem because it's a very small group. And if they stop procreating, there aren't any more Jewish people. Very small subsect. Christians were originally a subgroup in a subgroup. Okay? So Christians had to abide by this command because we would run out. And there was a very strong tradition of chastity in Christianity, which meant that there was not a lot of new Christians being born. So in Catholicism, we really stressed the be fruitful and multiply. And then we ended up being like the dominant world religion. But that's what that answer is. I know it's not a politically correct answer. I know it's probably not what the answer you want to hear, but it is the real true answer. That's what it's talking about. That's what it's talking against. Christianity did have an answer for it, but the answer was not, okay, go enjoy your sexuality. It was, no, if you want to be a eunuch for Christ, do it. But be a eunuch for Christ. Don't be a eunuch for yourself. You want to love your best friend? Love him. Just not sexually. You want to love your neighbor's wife? Love her, but not sexually. That's what it's saying. It's saying, hey, we get it. We get it. That rule was a little weird. Made it really hard for people to survive and kicked a lot of people out to the side who are really good, productive people in the world who really have a lot to offer. We want you back in the group. But we don't want you to give in to your lower natures. So the higher nature is to be better than your natural nature, to be supernatural. That's what actually supernatural means. It doesn't mean magic and all this other stuff that people put into it now. It just means to be of a higher nature. Supernatural. Super and natural put together. Higher than natural. A better nature. So it's saying, yes, your urges, your sexual urges are completely natural. It's completely normal to have these urges. Be better than them. Be stronger than your urges. You know that desire for vengeance that you have? Be better than it. That desire for greed, that desire to have as much as possible, more than anyone else, be better than that. Be charitable. Give what you have away. Be charitable. Give what you have away to those who need it. Your sexuality. I know you want to use it for power. I know you want to use it for pleasure. Don't do that. Instead, focus it on something productive. And if you can't be productive with it, cut it off. Literally. There you go. So that's the answer to those two questions. I think this is actually going to be the first video that I do. And in the rest of the videos, we'll follow along this one. I'm going to stop here because this is already the 5th or 6th video. I'm just going to be a whole series. Peace, like, and subscribe. Talk to you all later. You'll see the other ones come up after this one. And after that, if I decide to, if there's an audience for this, I'll film the other 6, which will be the back half of Grr's video. Why I don't argue against classical theism or creationism. Love you, Grr. Bye.